The third-generation Volvo FH debuted on the market in 2001, and already in 2005 it was upgraded. But the foundation for the market success of the Swedish truck was laid in 1993, when the first car with that name appeared. In 1997 to 2001, the second-generation FH was produced, which became the basis for the introduction of new developments. And now this car is at the peak of its form. It so happened that the Swedish company constantly surprises the world with its engineering discoveries and technical solutions. In the spring of 2006, she showed the Volvo integrated safety truck to experts and the press. The concept truck was equipped with a variety of sensors, cameras, laser scanners, and radar to track people, animals, and inanimate objects outside the vehicle. These devices help the driver stay in his lane, maintain a set speed, change lanes correctly, and safely avoid various obstacles. Most likely, most of them will appear on serial trucks in the near future. But for now, Volvo Trucks has been one of the first to start researching and applying systems for blocking the engine start by a drunk driver. The company has been crash testing cabs since 1960 to standards that have remained stricter than the official standards for many years, used underrun protection built into the front bumper, and much more. All this goes to show that Volvo Trucks is always striving to be one step ahead of the competition and to meet the expectations of carriers as much as possible, and sometimes even exceed them. Equipping Volvo Trucks has always been decent, and FH is no exception. It has everything you need for comfortable driving and comfortable rest on the road. And what is not in the basic equipment can always be found in the list of options. For Russia, the most popular model of a truck is supplied not only in the usual, but also in a special configuration, or rather, trim levels. These are the FH Black Russian and FH Mistral versions. Among the tangible and unpleasant breakdowns that cannot be eliminated on the road by the driver, the following are noted: replacing the spring pin, eliminating backlash in the fifth wheel coupling, and replacing the oil pan gasket. On 3 tractors plying between France, Belgium, Holland, Germany, Spain, Belarus, and Russia, 5 malfunctions were noted. The most unpleasant of them is the destruction of electrical outlets. There was an early replacement of the air and oil filters due to severe contamination. In addition, I had to put a new tip of the sealing cable instead of the crumbled one, which has nothing to do with cars. The labor intensity of repairs was 0.47 man-hours for one Volvo FH, which is more than 20 times less than the same indicator for MAZ. To complete the picture, it would be necessary to compare the Volvo FH with all representatives of the Big 7 European manufacturers. Similar studies have already been carried out by our German colleagues, for example, in the famous Arctic test. But we do not have the time and energy for such a large-scale test of strength now. And, then, we trust the opinion of hauliers operating imported equipment. Most of the Russian transport workers, with whom I had a chance to talk about the Volvo FH, speak positively about it. The car is really reliable, strong, comfortable. But it has a significant drawback: the high price. Carriers are sophisticated people in many ways. But, as practice shows, even experienced drivers make mistakes, and some of them are unforgivable, because they lead to breakdowns and malfunctions. In general, the term bad habit among truckers is associated not only with smoking or alcohol abuse. In their understanding, this is also an illiterate attitude towards the car. And there are more than enough such examples. For example, in winter or after a long parking, an old car sometimes does not start right away. The driver begins to turn the starter with the despair of the doomed, not thinking about the consequences. Meanwhile, it is recommended to crank the engine with the starter for no more than 30 seconds. And if the engine does not come to life, you should turn the key to the position of turning on the radio equipment and wait about 15 seconds before trying to start again. By the way, a starter with automatic overheating protection was installed on the D12D engine. If it worked, the starter should be allowed to cool for 3 to 15 minutes and only then resume attempts to start the engine. Drivers of foreign cars observe this rule, but their colleagues, who switch to imported vehicles from domestic cars, sometimes forget about it. Some drivers, out of old habit, warm up the power unit at idle. But in the case of the Volvo FH, it is best to do it not on the spot, but in motion at low speed at low engine speeds. It would seem a common truth, like the multiplication table, but not everyone observes it. But there are other kinds of extremes. When the ambient temperature is below 0, it is very important to warm up the gearbox. However, in most cases, hurried drivers hit the road, believing that everything will warm up in dynamics. This is the wrong decision. On vehicles with a manual transmission, you need to release the clutch immediately after the engine has come to life. At the same time, the pump in the gearbox will start working and the oil in it will quickly warm up to operating temperature. When parked in a car park, at a destination, or at an overnight stay, some carriers rush to turn off the engine and get out of the cab as soon as possible. But here, too, one should not rush. After driving with a heavy load, before stopping the engine, let it run for at least 1 minute at idle. In this way, thermal stresses in the engine and unnecessary loss of coolant can be avoided. The clutch is very sensitive to illiterate handling. The forgotten driver's foot on the clutch pedal, unjustified slippage, and the use of an unsuitable, incorrectly selected gear usually cause accelerated wear of the release disc. And then such an unfortunate driver talks with colleagues about the service life of a factory part of a particular manufacturer. So believe after that, experts. Clutch is vulnerable even in severe frosts. For example, at -20 degrees Celsius, the technical fluid sometimes freezes in the clutch hydraulic system. After depressing the pedal, it does not return back, and in a short time the clutch burns out. To prevent this from happening, it is necessary to fill the hydraulic system with a liquid with the appropriate properties according to the temperature regime. Sometimes there are situations when you need to enter a high curb, but if the wheels are tightly ground to the stone, it is not recommended to turn the steering wheel and drive up the hill at an acute angle. The result of such efforts can be not only a damaged tire, but even worse, a failed power steering. Therefore, the entrance to the curb should be tried to do at a large angle. Another mistake is the habit of shifting gears by ear. The noise of the engine has increased, which means it's time to move to another stage. It is more correct to drive on the tachometer, i.e. when the engine is running in the most efficient range, which corresponds to the lower part of the green field of the tachograph. As soon as the car starts moving, you need to shift to a higher gear, and it is recommended to develop the full engine power only if necessary. This is the only way to achieve any tangible fuel savings and extend the life of power units. The reverse gear on machines with a manual transmission is not synchronized, so before turning it on, you must turn on the low gear of the demultiplier. On a road with a good asphalt or concrete surface, you can back up in the high gear, but you cannot switch on the go from the highest to the lowest gear of the demultiplier and vice versa. First you need to select one of them, and only then turn on the reverse. To make reverse gear easier to engage, first of all, you need to select one of the synchronized gears, and only then, reverse gear. Due to this, the gears in the gearbox stop rotating and wear out less. It is not necessary to know the laws of physics, but it does not interfere with feeling the car with your skin. And that feeling comes with experience. On slippery road surfaces, it is sometimes tempting to slow down a fast-moving road train with an additional brake. Volvo has 4 types of these: VB engine brake, VCB compression engine brake, EPG exhaust gas braking system, and Powertronic retarder. The activation of the auxiliary brake occurs differently, depending on the type of additional retarder and gearbox. Experienced truckers warn against using the auxiliary brake on slippery roads. The wheels may lock and skid. The fact is that additional brakes affect only the drive wheels, which increases the risk of folding the road train. To reduce speed in such conditions, it is recommended to use the brake pedal, braking all wheels. In winter, it is sometimes necessary to use snow chains. It is wiser to install them only on the drive wheels. But if the traffic situation requires the use of chains on the driven wheels, you should remember, such an addition to the front wheel on the driver's side can damage the hydraulic system. There is probably a similar warning in the instructions, only where to get it at the right time in Russian, and who reads it. New cars have a lighting control unit, and there are no fuses. And if an open circuit or short circuit occurs in the wiring of the semi-trailer, no voltage is applied to the system. The driver does not understand and gets confused about where there is no light on a tractor or semi-trailer. You can't ring this circuit yourself. There is no technical possibility. In this case, you need to contact the service, connect to the equipment and test, although there is another way out. You can couple the tractor with another, serviceable semi-trailer and check the electrics. In most cases, it will turn out that there is no light on the semi-trailer. Contacts and connectors suffer due to moisture, salt, HCM, and other chemicals. It happens that before towing a faulty car, the driver does not have time to disconnect the cardan shaft. In such cases, one should not rush, because when transporting over a long distance, the gearbox can be seriously damaged, and the repair will cost a pretty penny. When rearranging a car with a manual transmission for several hundred meters, the card-end shaft cannot be disconnected, but it is necessary to turn on the highest gear. The technical illiteracy of drivers sometimes leads to a breakdown of the hydraulic trolley lift. Among the typical mistakes is a quick transition from pressing the top of the switch to pressing the bottom and vice versa. After turning on the key, the cart must be allowed to complete the movement and then return it to the middle position. The second common novice mistake is turning on the trolley lift when the preheat indicator light is on. The third is to keep the trailing axle raised when transporting heavy loads and tipping the platform. In this case, damage to the bogie is possible due to exceeding the maximum permissible axle load. If a malfunction occurs in the control of the supporting middle or supporting rear axle, you should not try to eliminate the breakdown on your own. Even with the engine turned off, the system is under very high pressure, and there is only one way to restore the system to working capacity: to a service center.